You're listening to The Jay Barker Show on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa.
And
Unreal.
I mean, that dog hasn't even whimpered the last 5 minutes. And now, man, she's right on cue. That's Lars's dog, by the way, Charlotte, who's a cute little puppy and wonderful, wonderful pet. But, man, she just has all of the timing in the world. Hey, welcome to the program, Lars, Matt, Justin. Got a great show lined up for you. Mike Rodak from Bama 24/7 will be on with us. And then at 1 o'clock, we'll be joined by the one and only Tim Brando, and I got to talk to him about the end of the West Virginia-Houston game, which we will all do in due time. In the meantime, it is Alabama versus Tennessee this week. She does not like Tennessee, Lars. That's it.
Apparently not.
She hates Tennessee and that putrid orange. Okay. Actually, I think their uniforms look pretty good. And their field. But they'll be at Bryant-Denny this weekend, so we won't have to worry about those checkerboards and running through the tee and all that. But, Lars, I wanted to ask you and Justin both, because you are different generations, and I kind of am on the high end. But, Lars, is there a moment that in your life as a child even that you saw an Alabama-Tennessee game on ABC Sports on a Saturday afternoon and you went, wow, this is something special? Or was it just another game?
Honestly, it was just another game. I happened to be at the Terrence Cody blocked field goal game, and that's when I kind of understood that it was different. I had never covered an Alabama-Tennessee game, and I just attended that game sitting in the stands. And, I mean, you could just tell by the noise level of the crowd that the fans were more passionate about Tennessee than, a normal team coming into Bryant-Denny Stadium. But when I was little, I loved Johnny Majors. I thought Nebraska and Tennessee sort of had a lot of parallels, and to me, and I've said this before, Alabama almost felt like just a different country, right? From a kid growing up in the Midwest. Like, everything just seemed so foreign to me, how all the students dressed up and everybody had shakers, and it was just so many cultural differences just in the appearance of the fans. And then, of course, you'd see Bear Bryant on the sideline, and even through the television to like a 8-year-old, I could sense like the gravitas of this man, of just the fact that he was a legend, and it was just it was quite magical to see that. But again, it just, Alabama for some reason felt a long ways away, but Tennessee was a program that I'm more identified with. But how about you, Justin? But that Terrence Cody game was just amazing. And
may I say something real quick here?
Yes.
We'll get Justin's thoughts. Terrence Cody is actually going to be on our show Thursday. Cool. So, yes. Justin, what's your first memory of Alabama to Tennessee?
I was very young. I was born in 2000. It probably was the Terrence Cody block. I can remember being there and seeing it, but maybe not the context or the understanding of football at the time. I think it's very different, though, because I was also not old enough to understand or experience the the controversy with Tennessee and Alabama and the fines or suspensions that they try to get levied on us. So I don't have that hate very much. And we've kind of been whooping on them for the past 15 years. So I've known nothing other than Alabama beating Tennessee. It's kind of been just a normal game for me. Of course, being a student, I understand the cigars, and I love that aspect of it. But yeah, really just a normal game because we've always won by like 30 until last year.
Well, I guess I'm the old school guy of the three because I just remember, I can't remember the very first game I watched, but it was on a black and white Magnavox in Huntsville, Alabama. And a guy named Bailey caught a deep pass to really start the game, and I just felt it. Another thing, later we got color TV, by the way, but The one thing I do remember that was just so cool when we got color is that back in those days, they would allow Alabama to wear they played at Legion Field. They would allow the Crimson Tide to wear crimson, and Tennessee could wear their burnt orange. And it was just this wonderful sea of fall colors. And then, of course, this has been one of the most streaky series in all of college football. Tennessee would win 7 or 8 in a row. Then Alabama what was the last time? They won 15 in a row. Is that right? Till they lost last year?
I believe so, yeah.
But it's just been a tremendous rivalry and a lot of fun. And, man, it is going to be wild in Tuscaloosa this weekend as Alabama takes on Tennessee. Now, Lars, any thoughts on the actual game? Have you done a deep dive into this?
A little bit. I do want to get into here in a second, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because I know it's not a topic that excites a lot of our listeners. But the NCAA president, Charles Baker, is testifying right now at a Senate hearing, and there is some news coming out about that, name, image, and likeness. But before we get to that, I'm really interested in Alabama's offensive line play. And because Alabama now, and you were right, you mentioned this yesterday, Matt, Alabama currently ranks 130th out of 133 teams in sacks allowed. They've given up 31 sacks through 7 games. And Nick Saban, when he was asked about, are you concerned? His response was, hell yeah. And, but Saban is adamant saying that it's not an ability issue. It's not a physical ability. It is sort of mental errors and all 5 guys not working together. And, maybe it's Jalen Milroe holding the ball too long. But if you just look at the Arkansas game on Saturday, all 5 sacks came from the left side and the protection of either Proctor or Pritchett, who are rotating reps at left tackle. And, some have been speculating, and Nick Saban was asked about this, about moving All-American right tackle J.C. Latham over to the left. So then he would be protecting Jalen's blind side. But then that creates problems on the right side. And so and then Nick basically was saying, look, the right side is good. We're just going to focus on getting the left side right. And, these guys have talent. Proctor, he started all 7 games at left tackle. And you got to remember, he's a true freshman. But Pritchett is getting more reps since the Ole Miss game. And so Alabama's also made a switch at right guard the last 2 games with Jaden Roberts starting in place of Dalcourt. But in the 3 players on the line that have started in the same position all year, when healthy, have been Latham at right tackle, Tyler Booker at left guard, and Seth McLaughlin at center. And, McLaughlin's had issues. Obviously, Booker's had issues. And now here comes Tennessee, right? This team is 3rd in the SEC in sacks, has 2 of the best defensive ends or the best pass rushers in the league in James Pierce Jr. and Tyler Barron. And it's going to be a challenge. And Matt, it's the more I think about it, this offensive line, and I can't believe I'm saying this. This is a sentence I've never said before. This offensive line is going to determine how far Alabama goes this year. I truly believe that, because Alabama's going to have to be able to, one, run the ball at least a little. They haven't been able to do that. But and then give Jalen some time to throw the ball. Especially, he's so good on hitting those deep shots. So that's the position group I'm really going to be focused on Saturday. So how about you? How about you, Matt?
Well, I think, like you just said, running the football is key. I mean, it's key to all of college football. But, they ran the ball. If I read this correctly, they ran the ball okay against Arkansas. I got this right. They ran for 196 yards. That includes sacks. Williams, McClellan, Haynes, and Miller all contributed to that. So, again, that's Arkansas. But Arkansas is pretty good up front, and to get nearly 200 yards in this game, the more I talk about this, the less I think that was that the number? I'm trying to look it up right now. But, running the football, and this has been true with some of the Alabama teams in the past, defense will keep them in any game. That defense can keep Alabama in a game against Tennessee, game against Georgia. Speaking of Georgia, as we go on a break, Lars, just a quick comment on Brock Bowers. He could be out up to a month.
Yeah, and it could stretch even to 6 weeks, and you feel bad for the guy. He had that same surgery that a couple Alabama players had, including Tua a few years ago on the high ankle sprain. And I think they really want to get him back for the games that matter, and that's going to be the SEC championship game. And from their perspective, they believe it will be the college football playoffs as well.
Hey, we're going to come back and talk Bama football with Bama 24/7's Mike Rodak as you listen to Big Noon Sports presented by Haley Sansing, Union Home Mortgage.
Laura Lee Thompson is known as the Bama Broker. She's a Tuscaloosa native, an Alabama graduate, and the only realtor in town with Wall Street experience. A skilled negotiator, Laura Lee knows how to buy low and sell high. And the Bama Broker isn't just going to show you houses. No, Laura Lee is going to educate you on the market, guide you to homes that fit your budget, and teach you how to sell your home for its maximum profit. Throughout the entire process, the Bama Broker will equip you with the tools you need to both buy a home and build financial wealth through home ownership. Trust me, the Bama Broker, who's as roll tide as houndstooth, will get you across the goal line. That's Laura Lee Thompson, the Bama Broker with Advantage Realty Group. You can reach her at 205-790-7229. Again, that's 205-790-7229. And you can also email her at lauralee@thebamabroker.com. That's Laura Lee @thebamabroker.com.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
A sunny sky this afternoon. The high today 68 degrees. Clear tonight, the low 46. Tomorrow sunny with a high at 73. Thursday, clouds gradually increasing. A chance of showers Thursday night. The high Thursday at 71. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 65 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
More Big Noon Sports coming up.
Back. It's Big Noon Sports. Many of our segments are sponsored by Laura Lee Thompson, the Bama Broker, Advantage Realty Group. She'll be along for a Hate Tennessee Friday at Innisfree, the place to be. Drop by, get a burger and some beer, have a lot of fun. We're going to be watching Alabama, Tennessee on Saturday and all the other games that are taking place this weekend. We're joined now by Bama 24/7's Mike Rodak. Mike, how are you today?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Pretty good. We've been talking yesterday and today about Alabama's offensive line and how they're trying to mix and match and make it work. How do you see that line moving forward? And I say this knowing full well that they rushed for 177 yards, and that includes the sacks. So are they getting better? Have they found a rotation, or is it still a work in progress?
Well, still definitely a work in progress. Are they getting better? I think to some degree, but there's also some things that are pretty persistent in terms of the pass protection issues, in terms of the penalties. The run blocking, I'd actually argue, has maybe gotten worse from where it was earlier in the year. That's kind of been Nick Saban's argument, and he wasn't really too happy with the running game outside of that first drive in the second half on Saturday against Arkansas. And it had the 3 big long runs. And really after that, they were kind of spotty, and they've been spotty for a few weeks now. So in terms of the personnel, at this point, I think you just continue to have to do what you've been doing, which is try to find some sort of who's the better left tackle in Caden Proctor or Elijah Pritchett, which means you're probably still playing both of them, which is crazy to think that we're still rotating guys. But if neither one of them is playing that well, then I think you've got to continue to look at the other one. So that's one spot. And then, right guard is somewhat of a question with Darian Dalcourt. His health has, I guess, been an issue the last couple of weeks, which is why Jaden Roberts has been there. Roberts has played decently well. Did have a penalty, I think, against Arkansas. So, does he continue to stay in that role? That's one of the questions going into this game. But, there's no magical fix personnel-wise. I think it's just you feel pretty good about your left guard and your right tackle. And if Seth McLaughlin can snap the ball well, I think you feel okay about him. And it's just, can you get by at right guard? Can you get by at left tackle? And nothing's really going to change at this point. Personnel-wise, nobody's going to be swooping in and helping you.
So, speaking of left tackle, Caden Proctor, I vividly remember signing day. He's the top-ranked player in Iowa. He's one of the top-ranked offensive tackles in the entire nation, 5-star by basically every site. He is committed to Iowa, and he comes out on signing day, and boom, goes to Alabama. And I'm from the Midwest, and I have a lot of friends in Iowa, and they couldn't believe it. I mean, they thought they had this kid locked down for years, and that he absolutely was going to be, a 3-year starter at left tackle, guarding the blind side, and then move on to the NFL. And he's a multi-sport athlete, really good basketball player, so he's athletic, he's big, 6'7", 360. And he gets to Alabama, and man, it's been a struggle. Have you seen flashes from him? And just your overall assessment, because I believe that this kid is going to be a phenomenal player, but it's just not happening right now.
Right. And, I think part of that is coming from Iowa. I mean, Iowa high school football is not going to be as strong as some of the guys that have come from IMG, whether it's been Evan Neal or J.C. Latham, Tyler Booker, and in general, the highest level of high school football is going to be in Florida or Texas or Georgia.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought of that. Yep.
And it's it's a projection, and that's some of the problems sometimes. Even not to get too off track, but a quarterback. Ty Simpson was a 5-star prospect, but he was playing kind of mid-level high school football in Tennessee. Versus Dylan Lonergan, who was a lower-ranked prospect, but he was playing high-level college or high-level high school football in Georgia. And right now, it seems like Lonergan might even be, there's more potential. He's further along maybe than Ty Simpson is. So it's kind of where you come from, I think, definitely plays a role in what sort of competition you had at that level. And I think we're finding out right now that maybe Caden Proctor's competition in the Iowa high school football circuit wasn't enough to prepare him for the SEC. And, and it may change. And that continues to be the messaging from his teammates, from Saban, is that, nothing's going to be perfect your freshman year and kind of stick with it. And we may be talking a year or two from now about him being an all SEC type of player. Like, I wouldn't doubt it. But, Evan Neal stepped in as a freshman and played really well. There's been freshmen who've played along this offensive line. Proctor was kind of forced into it too. I mean, I think it was a mistake for Alabama not to go and find a tackle in the portal like they did last year. After they lost Neal to the NFL, they went out and got Tyler Steen as a 5th-year guy, and veteran, kind of steady, and ended up doing really well for himself. A second-team All-SEC, a 3rd-round pick in the NFL. They kind of went into this season saying it's either going to be Proctor or Pritchett, and Pritchett's a second-year guy who barely played last year, and that, I think, was a gamble. And they lost a couple tackles through the portal, Amare Kite and Tommy Brockemeyer and Damian George. George and Kite had played a little bit. They had some experience. So they didn't really replenish that. And that was a risk. And I think they're kind of feeling that right now.
Hey, Mike Rodak, by the way, is our guest, Bama 24/7. What is the latest on Malachi Moore and any other injuries of significance? Yeah,
I mean, given Moore, kind of watching him in pregame warm-ups on Saturday, moving around pretty well. Nick Saban called him a game-time decision last week, and then he said after the game that they were never going to play him, so read into that as you will. But it seemed like he was good enough to be out there running around warm-ups, and at that rate, given another week, I would be surprised, if he doesn't play against Tennessee, which I think, maybe there was some thinking going into it that you rest him against Tennessee and you have the bye week after and you come back against LSU. But, there's obviously a pretty large importance for this Tennessee game. It's an offense that is not great passing compared to what they were last year, but there's still some explosive potential. And, I think you need him. So I would expect him to play. And the other two injuries that kind of came out of that game were C.J. Dupree, the tight end, to the hamstring. I don't think he's been practicing so far this week. Hasn't really been much of a factor when he's been on the field in terms of the stats. So, if he doesn't play, I don't know if it's a huge loss. Tresman Marshall is the other one who kind of came out of that game. I think it was a rib injury is what Saban said. And not totally sure if he's been practicing this week or not. But, Tennessee's one of the best rushing offenses in the country. Marshall's pretty good against the run. So that is someone I think if they can get him back for Saturday, they certainly will try.
Yeah, and just speaking of Tennessee, just give us your overall assessment of the Vols and what you have learned in your study of them so far this week and just what you've seen this year.
Yeah, totally different offense, not necessarily schematically, but in terms of what they're good at compared to last year where, they came in and they finished the year as, the best passing offense in the country with Hooker and Jalen Hyatt, and, the explosive plays and throwing all up and down the field. Tennessee's still going to run really fast. They're going to run tempo. They're going to do the wide splits with wide receivers, but they're going to run the ball. And they're they're number 5 in the country in rushing yards per carry. They're number 5 or 6, I think, in yards per game. And, they're the best rushing team in the SEC this year. They have, I think, 3 out of the top 10 guys in yards per carry. So, and they really did pretty well on the ground against an A&M defensive front that completely shut down Alabama's running game and was really good going into that game. So that's going to be the main matchup for me is that Tennessee offensive line versus Alabama's front 7. It's strength against strength. Obviously, Alabama's been really good against the run this year. So which one breaks? And if Alabama can stop the run, can they limit any of the potential of Joe Milton? Because Joe Milton's statistically has not done very well this year. But he's kind of what Max Johnson is statistically, but the potential for Joe Milton is still there athletically. His arms, legs, he has a much higher ceiling. And you just don't want that to show up all of a sudden on the field on Saturday in a key moment. So, you still have to be leery about Tennessee's passing game just in case.
How do you feel like, let's talk special teams for a minute. Just this tandem, is it the best? I think it's the best tandem in all of college football. Are they both All-Americans?
I think Will Reichert has a pretty good shot. Burnham has some pretty good competition out there, and obviously the injury, I don't know how much it's going to matter, but I know Nick Saban said, at the Texas A&M game, he was actually kind of happy that Burnham was not in there because he thought Burnham's hang time wasn't good enough and they were giving Ainias Smith chances against A&M. So he actually thought it was better to have Will Reichert in after Burnham's injury, and he got some more hang time and kind of limited the return. So statistically, Burnham's up there, but I think Saban still has some hesitation about the hang time and giving opponents opportunities. But I think combined, they're the 2 best specialists that any team has. And that's obviously big this year because, your margin's a little bit smaller on offense. You're not scoring as many points. You're not getting as many yards. And if you can steal some field position on punts and be able to hit some field goals, then that's be pretty important this year.
Mike, I always just assume before asking, and now I'm putting you on the spot live. Can you hang for another 10 minutes? I know you got player interviews at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Mike Rodak from Bama 24/7, brought to you by Laura Lee Thompson, the Bama broker, Advantage Realty Group. Back in just a couple of minutes.
Everybody is the Big Noon Sports Network.
It is just that, Big Noon Sports Network. In Tuscaloosa, we're broadcast on Tide 100.9, and also glad recently we have picked up another affiliate, and that's the heritage station that I know so well, and that's WTBC 1230 in Tuscaloosa. Hey, our guest is Mike Rodak from Bama 24/7. I got a media question that I actually think that our listeners and viewers will be very interested in. Today is player interview day. Of course, yesterday Nick was at the podium from about 12:15. How does that work? And who are the three players? And do they alter? I imagine they have to.
Yeah, so it's typically you have Nick Saban at noon on Mondays, and then there's two players that will go to the podium right after him every Monday. And then there's three that go on Tuesday. And it alternates to some extent. There's not exactly a formula, but there's only so many names on the list of players that are approved by Saban to talk to the media. So as we all know, there's no freshmen on there. And then even then, it's usually limited to veteran players who they trust and who have played and done some things on the field. So like even the transfer guys that they brought in, I don't even know if we've spoken to CJ Dupree. I don't think we've spoken to Tresman Marshall that I can think of. We did speak to Jalen Key once, but like it takes a while for some of these guys to, get on the list. And there's kind of their favorites like Kool-Aid and Dallas Turner this year are two of the bigger ones. Jalen Milroe certainly been in a lot recently. And it used to be, they would kind of go in a little bit of a scrum with us and was a more relaxed. Now some of them are walking up to a lectern on the podium and getting in front of a microphone, and that tightens them up a little bit. Some of these guys haven't done a whole lot of that. So it's a little bit more stiff than it was when I first started 5 years ago, when you're just kind of standing next to a guy and just kind of chatting. But it's just kind of how things are. But, I don't think we're going to hear them say that they hate Tennessee and they're going to win by 30. Obviously they're trained. There's a lot of media training that they go through to avoid those sort of things.
There's some serious media training. Okay, just out of curiosity, who were the two yesterday and who are the three today?
Oh, yeah, Milroe and Deontay Lawson yesterday. The three today, it's Kool-Aid, Tyler Booker, and there's one other who I'm completely blanking on that I probably should know. But again, there's probably I think right now, probably 12 or 13 guys total out of the 85 that are in the rotation. And that's it.
What have you thought of Jalen Milroe when you guys have a chance to interact with him? Has his confidence, have you seen it, dip and then come back, or just sort of like the body language that you see that you don't necessarily, are going to be writing about?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I don't have a great base to compare to last year, because he did obviously, at the Arkansas game and the A&M game last year, and that was when I was out on paternity leave last year. So I didn't really get to see him up close to compare it to. So really the first time that I've seen him talk was probably, I don't think they let him talk until after the Middle Tennessee game this year, because they didn't let any of the quarterbacks talk during the competition in the fall. And, he was very guarded after that, even, going into the Texas game. And I think we talked to him again, after not the South Florida game, but the one after that, the Ole Miss game. And yeah, I think he's gotten more comfortable with us, but at the same time, he's very, he kind of plans out what he's going to say and not necessarily answering the question. He's just kind of answering what he wants to say. So again, that's following their training to a T. And Bryce was like that to a certain extent too. Bryce, he kind of just got a long monologue that didn't really say a whole lot, but, again, I think the players are always kind of concerned about becoming a headline or becoming a soundbite, and, what that would mean for their social media, people coming after them, what that would mean for having to go answer Nick Saban. And you get a lot of players that are just very, very, very careful with what they say to us.
Yeah.
Can we switch topics to basketball real quick?
Yeah.
Who is Boogie Fland? And are they trying to do something with the Earth, Wind, and Fire song, Boogie Land?
To be honest, I have not followed the recruiting end of basketball probably as much as I should have. We have a recruiting guy at Bama 24/7, whereas when I was at AL.com, we kind of handled a little bit the recruiting ourselves. So I don't know the ins and outs of where he's looking and kind of what's the favorite. I know certainly he would be a big get for them. And, they've been in on some guys for 2024. They haven't gotten anybody yet in terms of commitments, but that's kind of how, college basketball works. That you're going to take some big swings, and it might only be one or two guys that they get in this signing class. That if you can get a 5-star, high-level guy, then that could change your season the next year. And otherwise, you're probably building through the transfer portal, which is obviously what Oates has done more and more. They brought in 4 guys out of the portal this year. So, you kind of take a big swing so you can get a big high school kid, but you're not going to be taking 3, 4, 5 guys as much anymore and developing them out of high school. It just isn't the way of college basketball.
Do you think Michael Penix Jr. is really on the fast track to winning the Heisman Trophy after kind of out-dueling Bo Nix in Seattle, Washington on Saturday, and also combine that with Caleb Williams' lackluster performance against Notre Dame Saturday night?
Right now, certainly, yeah. That's it's still a little bit early because Washington does have to go to USC in a couple weeks. And, the conference title game would still come into play there. So if you see Oregon again there, that gives Bo Nix another chance to show something. There's still a long ways to go. But I'll say this. Alabama could really use a loss from Washington because the prospect of a Pac-12 champion being undefeated could potentially hurt Alabama's chances if they do run the table here. They win the SEC. They're a one-loss conference champion. You want somebody to have a loss somewhere else. You don't want 4 other undefeated conference champions because that's bad news for Alabama. So, in particular, Washington, I think, is a team to watch where Alabama fans should be rooting for them to lose between now and December.
In that same vein, what should Alabama fans be rooting for? For Oklahoma to go undefeated, and if they play Texas again in the Big 12 championship game, for Oklahoma to win that, or for Texas to win that? Because that then, I would assume, could open up the possibility of 2 teams from the Big 12.
Yeah, well, I think either way, Alabama would be in trouble head-to-head against either of those teams. A one-loss conference champion Alabama, I don't think would get in over Oklahoma being undefeated, and I don't think they would get in over Texas being a one-loss conference champion because you have the head-to-head. I think the best-case scenario there is Oklahoma taking a loss before the conference championship, still getting there, and then beating Texas. You have a one-loss conference champion Oklahoma that doesn't have the head-to-head game against Alabama. That would be the best-case scenario, but as it stands right now, even with the SEC title, Alabama would not be guaranteed to get into the playoffs. They need somebody to lose somewhere. They need the ACC. They need North Carolina or Florida State to lose. They need something to happen in the Big Ten. It needs to happen somewhere because you don't want the scenario of having 4 undefeated teams everywhere else or having, Texas being the team that you're going up against and having lost to them directly.
Final question for you, Mike, because you've got to get to your player interviews here in just a minute. But Bowers is out for at least 4 weeks. Georgia's off this week. Then they've got Florida, Missouri, Ole Miss, UT. I guess my question here is just, can Georgia win it all again without him?
I think they'll get him back. It seems like a reasonable amount of time might be around the SEC championship game. I don't know if they'll rush him back to play Georgia Tech at the end of the year, but if they can get by, and I think they're still very much capable of winning the SEC East. I think they're very much capable of beating Tennessee, beating Mizzou, beating Florida. If they can do that, they have a really good team outside of Bowers. Then you have him back for the SEC championship game, and then you have him for the playoff, and I think certainly capable of winning a national championship there. And people forget, too. I think people kind of have this idea that Georgia's this ground and pound defensive team. They're number 5 in the country last week in passing offense. And Bowers is a big part of that, but there's other players, too. Like Ladd McConkey is a very good wide receiver. And that passing offense is pretty capable. So I wouldn't write them off the next couple weeks just because they don't have Bowers.
Yeah, and just final question for you, since we're not going to have a chance to talk to you before the Alabama-Tennessee game, what are you going to be looking for on the Alabama side? I was talking earlier, I'm going to be focused on offensive line, but what position group or particular player are you going to be looking at early to see how they're performing and how that ultimately will impact the result of the game?
Yeah, I think it's both lines. I mean, offensive line, certainly, and that's kind of been the norm. I think you go back to the last 4 games, and those opening drives, the last 4 games, I think, have all ended in sacks. This past weekend, I think Milroe ran for like 2 yards of third down, basically a sack. So, right away you can tell that there's been issues with the offensive line each week. Defensive line too, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to be tested, I think, probably more than they have at any other point this year with this Tennessee offensive line, with this Tennessee running game. And, I think we're going to find out if this defense is truly elite. I think they're certainly very good. But these next couple games against Tennessee, against LSU, which is one of the best offenses in the country, and even against Kentucky, which is a top 8 rushing offense in the country, that's when you're going to find out if this front 7 is what we've seen truly so far this year.
Always a pleasure, Mike. You're just chock full of information. Appreciate you joining us in the job that you do. Have a great week.
You got it, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Awesome as always.
Yeah, he's really dialed in. He does a great job. That's Mike Rodak. You can find him on Bama 24/7. In fact, I just went to the website, and he's got a really good read concerning Alabama offensive line. So I know everybody wants to read that, right? Lars, I sent you and Justin a story that has literally gone viral about something that happened in high school football in this state that is just about as troubling as I've ever read. I want to get you guys' thoughts on that as we continue on Big Noon Sports.
Go inside the Alabama Crimson Tide with the Gary Harris Show.
Hey, everybody, it's Gary Harris. Coming up on the Wednesday edition of the Gary Harris Show at 9 a.m., it's the NASCAR Report with Matt Coulter, also the Bama Football Recruiting Report, and a surprise guest as well. All that and more, 9 a.m. on the Gary Harris Show.
Catch the Gary Harris Show Monday through Friday, 9 to 11 a.m. on Tide 100.9 and Tide100.9.com.
Securing the best mortgage possible requires a lender who has knowledge, is trustworthy, and treats customers like family. And no one is better at all of this than the mortgage miracle worker, Haley Sansing. Based right here in Tuscaloosa, Haley Sansing has spent decades working in the mortgage industry. With Haley, it's personal, holding your hand from contract to close. With Haley, it's about one thing, you. Call Haley on her cell, yes, her cell, 205-792-1813. That's 205-792-1813. Let Haley help you.
NLMS number 230376.
Hey, this is Reagan, owner of R&R Cigars, the Cigar Mansion in downtown Tuscaloosa, located at 2703 6th Street across from the Home 2 Suites. Come down to R&R and see why we're the ultimate cigar and bourbon experience. With over 165 bourbons and 5 private barrels, our selection of bourbon is unmatched. We have the best cocktails around and our cigar selection is legendary. Our lounge and service are world-class. Come and experience the luxury of the mansion and see why it's a world-renowned cigar and spirits destination.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
A sunny sky this afternoon. The high today 68 degrees. Clear tonight, the low 46. Tomorrow sunny with a high at 73. Thursday, clouds gradually increasing. A chance of showers Thursday night. The high Thursday at 71. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 66 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
Covering SEC sports like kudzu on the roadside. This is Big Noon Sports.
Thanks, and welcome back to the program. It's Matt, it's Lars, it's Justin. And I read this story Saturday, and just really, golly, it just irked me. It did more than that, but I'm not going to go into great detail because I might end up using some words I shouldn't, that wouldn't be appropriate, and I don't want to, accuse somebody too quickly. But this story reads very clearly as to the point of Coosa Christian High School's coach Mark O'Brien. They played against Cedar Bluff. They played Cedar Bluff this past Friday night. The final was Coosa Christian 94-7. 94 points. In post-game comments, I'll read this verbatim from the
this is Matt,
story that was written.
This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Coosa Christian coach Mark O'Brien acknowledged he ran up the score and told the Gadsden Times it was in response to Cherokee County School Superintendent Mike Welch attempting to sabotage the Coosa Christian program. The paper also reported, the Gadsden Times, that O'Brien did not elaborate. This is horrible. I've gone to the point where I think I should write a letter or something. I mean, this is a major call down here. He did it on purpose and then admitted it. And I've dug behind the scenes, and his quote about sabotage was simply somebody reported what they thought was an ineligible player. I don't think that's sabotage,
Yeah, I mean, so the
association checks it out. They're either in or out.
And the AHSAA required Coosa Christian to forfeit 4 victories for playing ineligible players. So this 94-7, one of the most lopsided outcomes in recent history in the state of Alabama. And Cedar Bluff has been playing football since 1930, and that was their biggest defeat in history, so nearly 100 years. And the fact that Bryant did this, look, you and I are of the same sort of belief that we are real hesitant to call for people's jobs, right? But he needs to offer a massive, heartfelt apology and do it quick. Otherwise, the athletic director of Coosa Christian is going to be under immense pressure to get rid of Mark O'Brien. And I don't know what kind of relationship they have, but this is the absolute definition of, it's not even poor sportsmanship, Matt. It is horrendous sportsmanship. And why are you got a personal beef with the superintendent of Cherokee County, and you take it out on these 16 and 17, 18-year-old kids who are obviously overmatched? Just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. The more I think about it, fire his ass.
I think they should. I'm surprised that at least the school hasn't come out with an apology. And if they have, then, I'm sorry I haven't seen that yet, but I've been scrolling around on this story all morning and parts of the last couple of days. But I would think the school would at least step up. I haven't heard anything from the superintendent either.
Well, it's pretty
in his
crazy.
In his case, it's probably best to just not say anything until Coosa Christian does.
The superintendent, Mike Welsh, right? He served for 20 years as the principal at Spring Garden High, and then he was elected as superintendent of Cherokee County. He's the son of legendary Spring Garden basketball coach Dale Welsh, for whom the Spring Garden Gymnasium is named. So it's not like Welsh is new to the scene here. Like, you know, and if there's got to be some form of due process as well when the Alabama High School Athletic Association causes you to forfeit games because of ineligible players. I mean, the evidence has to be presented to Coosa Christian. But, yeah, Matt, this is just Bush League and terribly inappropriate. And this is a coach thinking that his personal vendetta is more important than the integrity of the game. And also, I mean, how is this really sticking it? Maybe I'm not understanding something here, but how is Mark O'Brien, as a coach of Coosa Christian, how is he really sticking it to Mike Welsh?
He's not. That's what makes it a damn
because he comes from Spring Garden, right? I mean, that's where he was the principal for 20 years, and that's where his dad was a coach, and that's where the gym is named after his dad. He's not from Cedar Bluff, the team that they absolutely just steamrolled in a completely inappropriate fashion.
Well, he's the superintendent of the county, of Cherokee County. And I guess that's why we said, if somebody turned him in, maybe it was Welsh. If it's against the rules, aren't you supposed to enforce them? I mean, this guy's an Alabama High School Athletic Association person. I certainly find no fault. But I was kind of like you at first. Is like I might be missing something here, or I might be finger pointing without enough knowledge. That's not the case. No. I've made some phone calls. I'm not going to identify my sources here, but trust me. All right, I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it. But evidently, this guy was still playing his ones with 2 minutes left in the game, and it was just very, very obvious and very, very intentional.
Well, yeah, I mean, the score certainly reveals that. And that is, what a horrible example. This is something Deion Sanders would do.
Now, see, there's the line attributed to Lars Anderson.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, look, and I've said this. I've sent it out on my Twitter feed to, my followers, that the reason that these Colorado players are acting so poorly is because the adults in the room aren't acting like adults in the room. And kids imitate adults. We know this. You and I know this. It's dads. It's your grandfather. It's your grandfather. Like we look up to the adults. We look up to authority figures when we're young. We emulate their behavior. What is this guy doing in terms of the message that he is sending to these kids who are playing their asses off for him?
I got two more statements. I want to bring Justin in, since he's probably closest to high school football. He didn't finish too long ago. But
last week.
I was told yesterday you can't get through to the school, to Coosa Christian. Their lines are busy or off the hook or something like that because so many people are flooding them with phone calls. And also, it is generally known that this guy's just a tool anyway, before all this happened. So, Justin, you just played high school several years ago. Your perspective on this?
I'm right there with you guys, and especially I produce with Kerry Clark the Friday Night Live show that we do here on Tide on Friday, covering high school football. We've seen our share of routes this season from Gordo, from Hillcrest, and all these other schools. One thing we talk about a lot on that show is running clock. Typically, when a team is up by 20, you'll see a running clock put in, and the only way that you get that is by agreement from both of the coaches. I'm wondering, I'm just trying to figure out how they had enough time to even score that many points, and I'm wondering if it's because the coach denied the running clock, which makes it even worse.
Yeah.
It's just a nasty situation and awful leadership and coaching from the coach there.
I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to keep a real close eye. As some of you know, I do a lot of work for high schools, and I do some games on Friday nights through my good buddy Adam Stocks, who used to produce our show many, many years ago from the River Sports Network, and I enjoy doing that. And Justin's spot on. I've done some games where they've gotten, it was really, really lopsided at the half. Sometimes they agree to do it. Sometimes the coach that is trailing a lot doesn't want to do it because he wants to get his team some more snaps. But you're right. They both have to agree. And in this case, I'm not sure Mark O'Brien did. I do not know that, as a matter of fact.
I did a story a few years ago for Bleacher Report about it was in Western Kansas, I think, and a team got beat something like 100-0. But the opposing coach did everything in his power to not have the score be that way, right? Short of just taking a knee every play, and you can't really do that. And there was absolutely no hard feelings whatsoever. He did it in a sportsman-like way, and he still felt terrible about it. But I mean, sometimes it's just you can't avoid it. I mean, maybe it was 80-0, but
you can't tell the kids not to try, even if they're third teamers. They want to play.
Yeah,
that's a difficult situation. Anyway, I will keep you up to date, like I said, on this particular story and update you. Coming up, top of the hour, you want to talk about an exciting game? Tim Brando did it last Thursday night, and he's going to describe the last 12 seconds of West Virginia Houston. Coming up to top of the hour on Big Noon Sports.
WTBC Tuscaloosa and W265CG Tuscaloosa, a Town Square media station. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
The best sports talk in Alabama. This is Big Noon Sports.
Indeed, this is Big Noon Sports. All right, Justin, I'm just going to have to talk on air with you because I was away from my microphone during that break, tending to a couple of things of note. Is our man Tim Brando up and on?
He sure is.
All right, let's talk to Tim Brando. Do you, and again, we are doing on-air producing here. Can you play what happened last Thursday night for me, please? Well.
Last completions in a row, which will be his last, and it's for the football game, if he can get it off. To the end zone. Tipped, and he caught it. It's touchdown. Holy Toledo. Stephon Johnson does it again.
Tim Brando on the call at the end of the West Virginia-Houston game. Tim, isn't that just the greatest feeling in the world to call it and nail it? I mean, I felt you, man. I say, all right, Brando, way to go.
Yeah, that is as close to Nirvana as, and it's true in any sport, by the way. In baseball, it can happen from time to time when you sort of anticipate, what a hitter might be doing and can it happen? Will it happen? And our jobs as play-by-play people is to first guess, not to predict or to be or to be contrived, but to just use our background and maybe just some information. And in that situation, the one thing I definitely wanted to do was get in a stat that was very meaningful, which was Donovan Smith had completed 15 consecutive passes. Now he's got one more to complete, and if he does, it's for the game if he can get it off, because he was going to be pursued heavily and was. He had to kind of roll to his left to get away from pressure before heaving the ball into the end zone. And, and prior to that, what you didn't hear, because it was not, that was actually the play itself, but to have had West Virginia score a touchdown with 12 seconds left,
right,
and then have a celebration penalty, which the other quarterback was the guilty party in, which gave them about half the field because they had to kick off from their 20-yard line. What it meant was, and we said it, that, with 7 seconds left, even though they had no timeouts left, a sideline throw to get the ball to midfield would then give them an opportunity to throw it to the end zone. With 7 seconds left, you got a shot at getting 2 plays off. And as it turned out, that's exactly what happened. So, in that moment, at that time, that's as good as it gets for a play-by-play guy. And for the game to be won and lost and then won again, for Houston, based on what had happened, they're trying to win the game with their defense and can't do it. But their offense gets a break because of that celebration penalty, which enabled them to get some decent field position. And then, a Hail Mary that is full of grace and gives the touchdown to the home team. And that was their first Big 12 victory. And it was happening for Dana Holgorsen against his old team, against West Virginia. Yeah. So it had a lot of emotion, raw emotion to it. And lo and behold, where am I going this week? Back to Houston for a 4 o'clock Eastern game. It'll start at 3 o'clock in the Central Time Zone, and they're playing Texas, a team that hates Houston, and of course Houston hates them. Texas said that they would never play. In 2001, DeLoss Dodds, their AD, said, we will never play a game again in Houston, Texas. That was prior to their move away from the Southwest Conference. There was just a lot of angst. The best way to put it about Houston and Texas, to put it in terms that you can understand in Alabama, Matt, it would be like Alabama being forced to play UAB. And you remember what that was all about. What the Alabama Board of Trustees tried to do, Bear Bryant Jr. tried to do to end UAB football. You remember all that. It was a political nightmare in the state. And, of course, prior to that, in basketball, with Anderson's view of Gene Bartow, and that all, you know the history there. It's a similar kind of political history with Texas and the University of Houston. They've got a huge medical center at Houston, got a lot of money, and Tillman Fertitta, who's their biggest supporter, sort of the Boone Pickens of the Houston program, he defies all Texas alumni that believes that Houston is a commuter school. He just absolutely hates that and has let them know that. And as a lovely parting gift, the Big 12 commissioner decided, as Texas was making its way out of the Big 12 to go into the SEC, they have in front of them now 4 games on the road, 3 of them in the state of Texas, and the one place where the Lost Dodds said they'd never play again, they've got to go to on Saturday afternoon. So we've got quite a storyline going into that game this week.
Holy Toledo. That popped up in that play-by-play. I just cracked up.
Yeah.
Normally, I don't like it when a color guy steps on a play-by-play guy, but I found that very acceptable.
Well, yeah, and Spencer knows. Listen, he's not shouting; he's just reacting, and I've got no problem with it. We're a team, and he that's a natural reaction. I want to make sure that I get the name of the person correct. There's about 5 guys all, like human pogo sticks jumping around trying to come down with it. My spotter, Brett Bender, is working in concert with me to make sure that we get the actual correct name. You never want to have to correct that. You want to get it right the first time. And
yes,
we did. And but Spencer, he's an established, outstanding broadcaster. He knows what's acceptable and what's not. And he was just, he was overtaken with emotion too. I don't want a robot to be next to me by any stretch. So I've never had a problem with dialogue of any kind over a major play call, because the floor was mine. He knew it, and my voice reigns supreme in that sequence, and that's as it should be. I think anyone that gets upset about that kind of thing, and I know some play-by-play people, Matt, do. I think they're being nitpicky, and I think they're filled with hubris if that's the case. If you love your analysts and the analysts love you,
isn't the whole goal? Isn't the whole goal to entertain your listeners, your TV viewers? And I think when your color guy does that, it's not, like you said perfectly, Tim, he was reacting to the moment.
Right.
And that's really cool.
It's raw emotion in the moment. I mean, who wouldn't say in that situation if as you're watching that, he caught it. Holy Toledo!
That's another thing. I
just needed to make sure that it was Stephon Johnson that got credit for the catch.
Yeah.
And again, for me, it was about the build-up, then the throw, and then of course after it happens, we name him, we lay out, and there's a good 30 seconds of crowd reaction, which is exactly what you want. So it was amazing. And, it was a Thursday night game. The building was about, I'd say 60% full. It wasn't a packed out. Thursday night games are not going to pack the house. This time around, you got Texas coming in, and they're going to have an SRO crowd. So it'll be amazing. But the crowd reaction, you would have thought it was packed at the moment that play happened. And it was certainly a moment that if Houston can somehow, get to a bowl game this year, that game will be the catalyst. That moment will be the moment that became the seminal moment of their inflection point, really, of their season.
And to say Holy Toledo, which is kind of our school type. I mean, I remember my dad would say that. You don't hear everybody say Holy Toledo anymore. I think that made it even more special. Hey, Tim, can we hang on to you another 10 minutes or so?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. You're listening to Tim Brando on Big Noon Sports with Matt and Lars and Justin. Lars is actually, just to explain something to you real quickly, Lars is on his way over here to pick up me as we are going to go. We announced this yesterday. Dear colleague's mother, Robbie Glenn, died over the weekend, and we are going to that funeral. So we're going to cut out at 1:30 right after Tim. And guess who's coming on early? Ryan Fowler. So I know how much you guys like to talk to him. Call him now, 205-348-9904. You can talk to him at the bottom of the hour, but I appreciate Ryan doing that very much. We'll be back with Tim Brando on Big Noon Sports.
It's the third down to the Plains. This is Alabama's most in-depth analysis on the SEC. This is Big Noon Sports.
Fox Sports. Tim Brando is our guest on Big Noon Sports. Tim, is this the most un-Saban-like team you've seen Alabama have?
In terms of overall talent, yes. I would also say in terms of winning, yes, because they've found some ways to win that I think is a credit to Nick as a coach, because they just do not have what they normally do. And I will give him credit for finding a way to win, although I think they've been fairly fortunate to get some of those W's. I mean, Arkansas, I'm going to take you back at the end of that game, fourth quarter. I was out in Oregon. We had a late game. After we did the game in Houston, Spencer and I flew on Friday out to Portland, and then took about a 2-hour drive into Corvallis, and had a day to get accustomed to the Pacific time zone. And then we did a game Saturday night, which was late in the afternoon on Saturday afternoon in Corvallis, Oregon. So I had plenty of time to watch the Arkansas Alabama game, and I thought that they were completely outplayed the entire second half. KJ Jefferson's the kind of quarterback you think would be playing for Alabama, not Arkansas. And as good as Jalen Milroe is coming around, and he is improving, he's limited. There's only so much that he can do at the position, and they're trying to coach around some of the flaws that Jalen still has, which is clearly being in the pocket. And they're rolling him out more. They're doing more things with him, trying to get a little bit more creative. I think sometimes they get caught up in that and they forget to run the ball maybe as much as I'm sure their fan base would like them to run the ball. But a lot of that is about trying to get Milroe into a groove, which a lot of fans I'm sure can't understand. But that, he needs to feel like that the team is his. And I think that's what Tommy Rees and Saban are trying to massage with him, especially with the games coming up. Now, I'm just going to tell you up front, I don't like their chances to clear these next two games with wins in both. Tennessee, I believe, can beat Alabama. LSU, in my opinion, can beat Alabama. And I think Alabama to split would be doing a hell of a job, to be honest, with this version of what their team is. But if you go back and remember what Arkansas had done, they've got the ball. They're right around the 40, 45-yard line, maybe past midfield, right at midfield. And they were really calling, their offensive guys were calling a great game. And the running back, whose name escapes me, I don't think it was Rocket Sanders. I don't think he was in there. I think it was another back. But they ran off the right side, and Alabama's defense was misaligned. And I'm telling you, Matt, the ball, he's going to go for 20, 25 yards. The kid might have even scored a touchdown. And the turf monster got him. You remember the play I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do now that you bring it back up. Yeah, he tripped over the hash mark.
Yeah, he tripped over the hash mark. It was just a turf monster situation. And they were faced with third and long, and on the next play, KJ got sacked. All right? They came with pressure, and they got a sack. And that's what forced Arkansas to have to punt the ball with about 5 minutes left, and they never got the ball back. So that was their last possession. If that play doesn't happen, and that was just good fortune for Alabama, okay, if that play goes for as long as I think it's going to go, they either score on that play or they score very soon after that. The chances of them, getting a lead was, it was there. That game could have been stolen by Arkansas. But Alabama hung on, and when Milroe had to make a play, they needed to get a first down on third down. I think there was some question as to whether they would throw it or not throw it. He got the pass off against pressure. I got hit hard in the midsection, got the ball to the line to make, and that put the game away. So the Tide held on to get that win. And I hear the reaction from everyone in Alabama, even some of the pundits in the SEC, is, they relaxed. No, it had nothing to do with that. Arkansas outplayed them, and Arkansas had the talent to outplay them. They had the better quarterback. They've got good backs. They've got good personnel. Arkansas's played everyone tough. Not just Alabama. They just haven't finished the game. They got to get. Arkansas's problem is they haven't been able to finish off a game. They played really hard and really well against people. They've got talent too. The issue for me, if you're Alabama, is how do we get to a point where Arkansas is as competitive and as talented as we are? And that's just a fact. That you can't get past that. Saban is a hell of a coach. I think when you hear Alabama fans talk, it's all about Tommy Rees. Is a joke. Of course, it's always about the offensive coordinator or the defensive coordinator. It's the same line from all the Alabama fans that are just, I've been you've heard them. I've been an Alabama fan since 1963. They're all going to say the same thing. It's always going to be the coordinator's fault. It's never Nick's fault. And, our kids coming along and People just need to get off Jalen Milroe and blah, blah, blah. Jalen is a hell of an athlete playing quarterback, but he's not a hell of a quarterback. He's a hell of an athlete playing the position of quarterback. And this is the first time that Nick has had a team that's tried to win despite the quarterback. Okay? That's a hard thing to do every week. And I think there will come a time when a defense is good enough to force Jalen Milroe to beat them with his arm, not with his leg. That's what happened with Texas. And I think it's going to happen again, whether it's with Tennessee this time around or a couple of weeks after against LSU. The thing that's got to be particularly bothersome about both Tennessee and LSU as the next matchup is that, unlike Arkansas, Matt, those teams force you to score to win. Okay, Tennessee's offense is going to score enough points that the onus will be on Alabama to score a lot of points. And if you thought you had to score a lot of points to beat Tennessee, you're going to have to score even more points to beat LSU, because that's the best offense in the conference without a doubt. And their defense may be improving, or maybe they looked better than they should have looked because Auburn's offense wasn't very good on Saturday night. All right, you can look at it either, one of two ways. But know this about LSU: their offense is the most prolific offense in the conference right now. Yeah. And Alabama, if they beat LSU, is going to have to probably score 45 to do it. And I don't think they're capable of that.
Tim, I've got 1 minute. As I just mentioned a minute ago, we're limited on time. Who are the best four teams in Brando's poll, and who right now leads in the Heisman?
Right. Well, I've got Michigan 1, and I know people say, well, they haven't played anybody. Yeah, but you know what? Like Georgia, unlike Georgia, they've beaten people up. They're playing to their own standards. Okay, so I've still got them there. I believe Washington certainly deserves to be behind Georgia. And they are. I've got Georgia where I've got them. I've got Washington right there, and I think that the next best team, you can make a strong case, is Oregon. Even though they lost that game, Dan Lanning lost it on analytics. If he hadn't gone on 4th and 3, or if he had taken points at the end of the first half, Oregon might have won that game. But those are the best four right now that are playing in college football, in my opinion.
Heisman leader right now, Tim. I'll let you go.
Well, the kid from Florida State, I think I've got Florida State ranked ahead of Oregon for obvious reasons. But their quarterback right now, in my opinion, has got to be considered. And I think also Michael Penix of Washington is the leader. We can see USC for the fraud that they are. Caleb Williams' Heisman hopes are done. Dash for good.
3 picks will do it to you. All right, Tim. Thank you. Have a good call this weekend. I know you will. Appreciate your time as always.
Thank you, Matt. Take care of yourself. I hope your in-law is okay, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Yes, thank you very much. Ryan Fowler's going to start his show 30 minutes early, and that is what's coming up right after this break.
Built to win. Touchdown, Alabama. Built for championships.
Throws intercepted, Alabama.
Built by Bama.
Alabama is still Alabama.
The Crimson Tide play here. Join us Saturday as the Crimson Tide look to get revenge on Tennessee. Our coverage begins at 11:30 on your home for Alabama football. Brought to you by Birmingham Racecourse. BirminghamRacecourse.com. You can be a winner too.
It's back. Laura Lee Thompson is known as the Bama Broker. She's a Tuscaloosa native, an Alabama graduate, and the only realtor in town with Wall Street experience. A skilled negotiator, Laura Lee knows how to buy low and sell high. And the Bama Broker isn't just going to show you houses. No, Laura Lee is going to educate you on the market, guide you to homes that fit your budget, and teach you how to sell your home for its maximum profit. Throughout the entire process, the Bama Broker will equip you with the tools you need to both buy a home and build financial wealth through home ownership. Trust me, the Bama Broker who's as roll tide as houndstooth, will get you across the goal line. That's Laura Lee Thompson, the Bama broker with Advantage Realty Group. You can reach her at 205-790-7229. Again, that's 205-790-7229. And you can also email her at lauralee@thebamabroker.com. That's Laura Lee at thebamabroker.com.
Hi, former C.
Securing the best mortgage possible requires a lender who has knowledge, is trustworthy, and treats customers like family. And no one is better at all of this than the mortgage miracle worker, Haley Sansing. Based right here in Tuscaloosa, Haley Sansing has spent decades working in the mortgage industry. With Haley, it's personal, holding your hand from contract to close. With Haley, it's about one thing, you. Call Haley on her cell, yes, her cell, 205-792-1813. That's 205-792-1813. Let Haley help you.
NLMS number 230376.
Hey, this is Reagan, owner of R&R Cigars, the Cigar Mansion in downtown Tuscaloosa, located at 2703 6th Street across from the Home 2 Suites. Come down to R&R and see why we're the ultimate cigar and bourbon experience. With over 165 bourbons and 5 private barrels, our selection of bourbon is unmatched. We have the best cocktails around and our cigar selection is legendary. Our lounge and service are world class. Come and experience the luxury of the mansion and see why it's a world-renowned cigar and spirits destination.
From T-Town to the Plains, this is Alabama's most in-depth analysis on the SEC. This is Big Noon Sports.
Back into Big Noon Sports. I'm Ryan Fowler. Going to sit in with you for the last 30 minutes, and then we'll end up handing off to my show coming up at 2 o'clock. A lot of things to talk about, a lot of things to discuss. We will take some phone calls, filling in for Matt Coulter and Lars Anderson, getting out of here just a couple of minutes early. And I came in, and hey, it was a great day. You know, I went to City Cafe, got a little charged up, got plenty of good food, good substance. Hanging out with the best fans in the country requires a little bit of energy. And I want to go to a couple different things because I want to look at this Tennessee-Alabama rivalry for just a couple of minutes. Justin, you may or may not believe this, but Alabama used to lose to Tennessee. And it was a very streaky rivalry. But when you look at Alabama would go on these runs, Tennessee would go on these runs. When I was a student here, we were on a little losing game streak, and it was not pretty. It was I remember Jason Witten, the Dallas Cowboy tight end from a couple of years ago. He came to Bryant Denny. It was a very simple elementary pop pass. It was simple route, and we could do nothing to stop him. I can still see that number 1 jersey. It's what he wore. Correct me if I'm wrong. I need to look that up. But I think it was number 1, Jason Witten, and I can still see that jersey completing passes or completing receptions there. Just when what he was able to do to Alabama, he was number 1. So, and I can even spot back times and memories of losing to Tennessee. I have family that is from the state. They live actually in Wears Valley, which is between Sevierville and Townsend, Pigeon Forge, that area right there. They live right on the mountain. It's beautiful, but you go in their home and there's Tennessee this and there's Tennessee that. You got to sit in a cushion out on the rocking chair looking at the Great Smoky Mountains, and it's Tennessee, Big Orange, and they like to aggravate me. So I married my wife in 99. So actually before that, maybe I was a year off, 98. And so
that's something you need to get right.
Well, I know 25's coming up this March, and I'll make sure that I've got that straight. So whatever year that was, I got to go back and look, I guess. But going into their home and watching Alabama get just beat, and then now we flipped the script until last year, and it was 1907 record. So I guess from your perspective, do you have the hatred for Tennessee that most Alabama fans hate? Because I think you almost have to live through those consecutive losses. And I can only imagine from their standpoint of losing 16 years in a row to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Do you remember the hatred? I mean, you had the same hatred?
I really don't. I feel like I have a very vague memory of the Mount Cody block, from the perspective of 4 foot off the ground, maybe. But I don't. All I know is beating Tennessee. Third Saturday in October isn't so.
It's a win. It's a win.
It's a cigar, and then we go about our business. And we're not looking forward to Tennessee, but we're looking forward to Auburn. That's what I kind of grew up on with. Although they haven't beaten us as much either, but their wins are sprinkled in there and have given me the.
And in the back of your mind, to me, you cannot have a football season without having the third Saturday of October. And to even think that we're flirting with the possibility of not playing Tennessee every year, it's almost like you get to this week, and we've heard all the talk throughout the offseason. Hey, they may go to this scenario. They may go to a 7-1 model where you have 7 permanent teams. One permanent team and 7 rotating, where you play everybody in 4 years. But I can't even imagine not having a game. A couple of weeks ago, there was a writer over in Mississippi that wrote that the Alabama-Ole Miss rivalry, the Alabama-Mississippi State rivalry may be going away for a little bit of time. And it may come back, but this continuation of playing Tennessee every single year, it almost stings you a little bit. It almost gets you to the mindset where you're thinking, could this really happen? I mean, yes, it can. It can. So what we'll do is we'll open up some phone calls, but to even think about this game could go away. So it almost makes you appreciate the significance of it when you get to this week, the third Saturday of October. The temp is beginning to fall, right? We hit the 40s last night. The leaves are beginning, and I love this time of the year because to me it's God's painting a beautiful portrait, right? The leaves begin to change. I live out in the country. It's not like I live out in the sticks. Live about 15 minutes west of Tuscaloosa, out close to Lake Lurleen. And right now the leaves are starting to change, but another couple of weeks. But it's this time of the year that it feels like football weather. The temps are beginning to drop. And so we'll discuss it. We'll take some thoughts. We'll take some analysis. But when you look at this Alabama-Tennessee game, when you look at the third Saturday of October, even think that we're flirting with this. But, it's bigger than this. And I heard Tim Brando just a couple of minutes ago talking about Alabama. And there were some parts that he said that I'm going to agree with. There's other parts that I'm looking at and I'm questioning. Here's the problem. Nick Saban hit 200 wins on Saturday. The problem is this. Nick Saban has conditioned our brain to think this is what Alabama is supposed to look like. This is who Alabama is supposed to be, right? Alabama is supposed to be a team that's fairly clean when you talk about, right? When you talk about the jerseys, whether you're talking about that beautiful crimson jersey at home or those road whites, this is what an Alabama team under Nick Saban is supposed to look like. And this one doesn't remind you of those characteristics. When you look at this Alabama team, on the offensive side of the football, who do you have to circle? Who do you have to account for? Who do you have to go out there? All right, I got to know where Mark Ingram is. Right there he is, right there. Okay, hold on. Whoa, they're going to line him up in the wild tide, as we called it, or they're going to move him here. We got to make sure we know where he is. How about Derrick Henry? Oh, yeah, we got this one. Yep, we got him right here. Here he is. Amari Cooper. Where's Amari? Yep. We got to make sure we account for him. On this team, who do you have to account for on the offense? You got a below average offensive line. You got below average wide receivers. You have I'm being nice, an average quarterback. Tim Brando said he was an athlete playing quarterback. At times he does. He does look like an athlete playing quarterback. So you try not to be negative, but some of that, it holds water. When you look at this offensive side of the football, it's not what you're accustomed to seeing. I was asked this morning, I was on in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the guy said, what's the confidence like that Alabama can compete for a championship? I said, well, I think there's still a path, but it's more about where they've been in the first 7 games. Is there a light switch out there that they can hit and they automatically get dialed in and they beat Tennessee and they beat LSU and they beat Kentucky on the road and they beat Chattanooga here, they go to Auburn and beat them, go to SEC title game and beat Georgia and I know a lot of Alabama fans out there pulling for Georgia to slide, you really don't need Georgia to slide. You really need them to continue to win. You want them to be number one when you play them in the SEC championship game in Atlanta. You want Georgia to be there. You want them to be standing tall and say, hey, we're the number one team in the country, and Alabama just beat you by 17 points. And then you make that argument that you belong in the college football playoffs. Phone line's completely jammed up, so we'll get to those coming up in a couple of minutes, and we will take scores early on the Dreamland Score Prediction Days. I appreciate Matt and Lars for allowing me to come in for a couple of minutes. And I want to read you another tweet because this may be the part that will tie all this together, try to wrap it around. Dabo Swinney, just a couple of minutes ago, was in a press conference and said, Dabo Swinney on Clemson fans' unrealistic expectations. You could apply this to Alabama. We're at a point where if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. And this is just such a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon can get a little full, too full, end quote. Brett McMurphy puts up there, so Tigers have made 12 consecutive seasons with at least 10 victories, but will miss the college football playoff for the third straight year. Could you apply that to Alabama? Because Alabama, possibly, not winning a national title for 3 consecutive years. Maybe college football has changed. And for Clemson, you're not a historical tradition of winning. Dabo's giving you things that really, I get it. Andy Ford did it in the 80s. But when you look at Dabo, he's given something to Clemson that they didn't have. And so I guess a little bit different mindset, but I almost asked the question, and I know we're going to 12-team playoffs, and that will be the new barometer, right? If you get into those 12 teams, it'll be considered a success. If you don't, then it won't be. So maybe this is the new college football. I'm a big fan of the NFL. I like to follow these Alabama guys. Love to watch the Alabama guys run up and down the sidelines, whether it's Bryce going up against Tua this past week, or if you're having a chance to watch Amari Cooper and the Cleveland Browns beat the San Francisco 49ers or whomever, just to follow these guys, to watch these guys have success. It's a lot of fun to be able to watch these young men develop from high school players to college to the NFL, and not just at the NFL, but being superstars at that level. Any given Sunday, you can be beat. We're working our way to college football where any given Saturday, you can be beat. Not just a easy statement, but that's where we're at in college football. And I don't know if it's the talent been spread thin, and I know we have some news around the NIL. I've told you for weeks, don't count on Washington, D.C. to clean this up. We've created this. Now we're going to have to fix it. How are we going to have to fix it? Well, they're going to have to be some leaders take charge in the commissioner's side of things. Some of these commissioners at the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, the Pac-12 is going to have to stand up and going to have to take charge of this wonderful NIL world that they've created because of their neglect. So we'll take some phone calls. Sitting in for just a couple of minutes with Lars and Matt. They had to slip out a couple of minutes early, so I came in a couple of minutes early to hang out with the best fans in the country. We'll come back. We'll take some phone calls on the other side. Phone lines completely jammed up. Joseph, Greg in Athens, Paul in Lincoln, Bubba, and many others. We'll take some scores. We'll take some thoughts. But Nick Saban audio, something that you may have missed, we'll play it next. Something that grabbed me a little bit yesterday, talking about this rivalry and a lot more. You're listening to Big Noon Sports on Tide 100.9 and 1230 WTBC, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide Sports.
Weekday mornings at 6 a.m. The Martin Houston Show.
Join us tomorrow for a Wild Card Wednesday as we look inside the playbook. We'll also talk about I want to see more of what. We'll look at the keys to victory as we look to the third Saturday in October. Those conversations and more right here on the Martin Houston Show, powered by Max Sports.
Catch the Martin Houston Show from 6 to 7 weekday mornings on Tide 100.9.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
A sunny sky this afternoon. The high today 68 degrees. Clear tonight, the low 46. Tomorrow, sunny with a high at 73. Thursday, clouds gradually increasing. A chance of showers Thursday night. The high Thursday at 71. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 67 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
More Big Noon Sports coming up.
Back into Big Noon Sports. I'm filling in for the final 30 minutes with Matt and Lars. They had to get out a couple of minutes early, so we'll be with you all the way until 6 p.m. We'll do a Dreamland Score Prediction Day. Phone lines completely jammed up, and we'll get to those coming up in just a couple of seconds. Let me go back to Nick Saban's opening comments because he said a lot to recap Alabama and Arkansas, but also looking ahead to this third Saturday of October. Listen to what the best coach in college football had to say on his Monday noon press conference. I know you heard it right here on Big Noon Sports, but it's just something I want to dive into just a little bit here with Nick Saban.
So after watching, the Arkansas game, I think we did a lot of really good things in the game. And I think it was also fairly apparent that when we had mental intensity, good mental energy, good focus, we actually executed pretty well. And there were times in the game, especially in the second half, where we sort of lost our mental edge, our intensity, affected our focus, and we didn't play as well and actually let the other team get back in the game. So I think the lesson to be learned in all that is you got to maintain intensity for 60 minutes in the game, regardless of the score. I mean, there's games out there every week where people have leads and, lose their focus and, the outcome is not, what you would want it to be. So, this game we're playing against Tennessee, big rivalry game, means a lot to a lot of people in the state of Alabama, and I'm sure there too. It's one of the best rivalries in college football. They have a really good team. They're ranked in the 15th or whatever. And so they have a really, really good team, very explosive. Josh Heupel has done, an outstanding job there. You got to, they play with great tempo on offense, which is challenging for the defense, but their ability to run the ball and create balance has been, pretty phenomenal this year. I mean, they run it for like 230, pass it for like 210, whatever. And that kind of balance is always something that is difficult. Their defense is playing really, really good. They're in the top 3 or 4, in the SEC, ranked nationally, and, negative plays, sacks, tackles for loss, and those types of things. I think Joe Milton is a really good quarterback. They got 3 really good runners who have all been very productive. They've got good skill guys outside. So this is, all around, a really, really, good team. So it's important for us, to have a great week of preparation and be able to maintain focus in practice, in meetings, and whatever we're doing to be able to carry that forward in a game and be able to sustain it in a game for 60 minutes, which is what it's going to take in a game like this. All
right. So Nick Saban said, when we talk about the mental focus, okay, and I wrote down mental edge is one of the words that he used. He said it a couple different ways, but mental edge, focus, attention to detail, all of these things can be under one thing. When this team has it, they're a great-looking football team. But they haven't been able to play. I mean, there's one game that we can look back and say this team did not take a break. And I know you're not able to say mental sharp. I'm not able to do it for 4 hours. I know they're not able to do it for 3.5. They're not able to do it for 4 quarters. If this team is able to do that, I don't think there's a team in college football that they cannot beat. I don't think there's a team in college football that Alabama can go, if we play our best, they can beat anybody in the country. Whoever wants some. Florida State, Washington, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia. If Alabama plays at their best, then they can beat a lot of teams but they can also lose some of those games. They could be one of those teams that slip up. They could be one of these teams that has multiple blemishes on their resume. Not just Texas. These next couple of weeks will probably define. We look at Texas A&M. We thought that was a building block. Okay, here we go. It's a launching pad for this Alabama team. And then what happened? They regress. Now, we can hope and we can make up excuses and we could say, well, maybe they were looking ahead to Tennessee. We could say that. We could also say maybe this is just who this team is. 7 games into it, not game number 1, not game number 2, not game number 3. This is who this Alabama team is. It's frustrating. It's like a roller coaster. But I go back to what Dabo said a couple of minutes ago. Maybe we just need to look at the expectations. Maybe that's our problem. Let's continue. We'll take phone calls, and we'll go to Joseph. Joseph, your first stop on Big Noon Sports. I hope you're having a great day.
What's up, Ryan Fowler?
I bet you love what Tim Brando said a couple of minutes ago, do you not?
I totally agree with him, Ron Fowler, to be honest with you. I mean, he's right. I mean, Jalen Milroe is a great athlete. I mean, there's no fault. But as far as his straight quarterback, if you look at the straight quarterback, I mean, it's hard to say that he's a really outstanding quarterback.
Well, here's the difference, okay? When you look at when you look at Blake Sims in the Amari Cooper record-setting season, they figured out what they could do, and they said, okay, Blake Sims, we know that you're a scout team guy. We know that you've been kind of pressed into responsibility. Let's figure out what you can do, and we're going to highlight your strengths and disguise your weaknesses. Tommy Rees has done very little of that. Very little of that.
I agree, and I'm going to be honest with you, though, Ron Fowler. I think we're going to come out and blow Tennessee out of the water, to be honest. I believe Alabama's just pissed off from last week, and I believe that.
Well, there's plenty to coach.
Well, I mean, I believe Saban's just to get that. I mean, Saban's just to get all over them boys after what they played last week. And you just said completely different. You're like, dang, where did this Alabama team come from? And I'm going to go to different teams this Saturday. Now, that being said, I think the score is going to be, I would say 28 to 17. That's what I'm going to say.
Alabama?
Yeah, Alabama. This team hasn't got out of the 20s all year, right? I mean, really. I mean, their high ceiling is.
Well, only the non-conference games that they're able to stretch out a little bit, and they kind of skew the numbers.
Yeah, but I'm just going to be honest with you, Ryan, man. Do you know Julian saying?
Do I know him? I've interviewed him. I don't know him, but I've interviewed him.
I mean, have you watched him, like, how good he is?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's legit.
He supposedly won all the awards that Tua Tagovailoa won, correct?
I don't know about all the awards. He was the Elite 11 MVP. So was Tua Tagovailoa.
And Bryce Young, right?
Now, was Bryce Young the Elite 11 MVP? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I know Tua was. I mean, I would assume that Bryce was, but I don't know that for certain.
Well, my question to you, Ryan Fowler, is if this kid is good as they say he is, and he's good as they advertise, because I'm going to tell you, Ryan, without a doubt, you know freshman Tua Tagovailoa would beat Milroe out of this job. You know that. You can't say he would. A freshman Tua would beat Milroe in the quarterback battle. And I'm going to say, if this kid is good as advertised, I don't see how he don't start next year, to be honest with you. I mean, how are you going to keep him off the field, Ryan, if he's just as good as Tua was or just as good as Bryce was?
But see, I think there's going to be some competition. I mean, you've got Milroe that will have the previous starting experience. He would have the advantage. But I think there'll be a all-out spring quarterback competition, whether it's Julian Sayin. But watch out, man. I continue to hear some great things about Dylan Lonergan behind the scenes. I know he's a freshman. I know he's still growing. It's a development position. But some of the things that I've heard behind the scenes, very positive. So I wouldn't count out that young man.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't count him out, but I mean,
what will it take to unseat Jalen Milroe? A bunch.
Well, I mean, Jalen Milroe is going to have that aspect that Jalen Hurts had. Because it's going to be hard to pry Saban off of it now, I think. But
well, and we've watched Nick Saban many times be very loyal to his quarterbacks.
There you go. He's being loyal.
Because,
that's a problem.
you know, when you go back at 2017, Tua's freshman season, I mean, I talked to so many different players on the offensive side of the football that would talk about how great Tua was in practice. But Nick Saban had to have an excuse to go there, and he did. He got that excuse. Brian Daboll. Go ahead.
Well, see, to me, there would not be no excuse to go there. To me, it's like, hey, look, I love your kid. I love that you. Thank you for all you done. But it's more or less, you know, hey, this kid's beating you out. This kid's playing better. This kid gives us the best chance to win. So I'm going to have to start this kid over. I don't get the lawyer card because in college football, the best guy should play. I don't care how much experience one guy has. If a guy, whether it's a senior or a freshman, if the guy is better than the guy ahead of him, he should get the start. Experience comes when you get in the game and you go. But if he's got a better arm, better accuracy, and he makes better decisions, he needs to be in the football game, man. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm not saying Julian Sagan is going to do that because he's in high school. Nobody knows how he's going to react when he gets to college. Nobody does. Because, I mean, he could get out there like a deer in headlights. I thought Ty Simpson was going to be really good as a 5-star, but he got out there and looked like a deer in headlights. I mean, Julian Sagan could be the same way.
We've had a lot of quarterbacks. Blake Barnett in 2016 that asked Jalen Hurts to be pressed into duty. Was that guy. Deer in the headlights look. USC got him. Joseph, give me a tiebreaker real quick.
Tiebreaker?
You get to choose the tiebreaker. I mean, you're the first caller out of the gate.
Oh, wow. I've never got to do this before.
It's a big honor.
I know it. Tiebreaker, let's go with Jalen Milroe's passing yards.
All right, Jalen Milroe's passing yards, okay?
I'm going to be honest with you. Brian, I'm trying to reach deep down this year. I'm trying, man. I'm digging deep because I'm an Alabama fan, and I want to see Alabama win so bad. But, man, I'll tell you, it's so hard not to go negative this year. It really is. It's so hard.
Gotcha. All right. I got it, man. Thank you so much, Joseph. Hey, what was the number? You didn't give me a number. I'm sorry.
The number, I'm going to say Jalen Milroe's going to have a big day. I'm going to go 250 passing yards.
250. So you believe there. Joseph, I appreciate you so much.
Hey, before I go, do you think Shane will be able to challenge for the job next year or not?
I think it would take a lot to win it. I mean, he'll have to, what does it say, leave no doubt? He'll have to leave no doubt. So whoever it is.
So overall, you think Milroe's got the job?
I mean, that was the situation this year. I mean, that's why Jalen Milroe is your quarterback, and you know the other guys are sitting on the bench wanting to be the number one quarterback. Hey, thanks, Joseph. I appreciate it. Appreciate your phone call. We did get it one score in. We'll take more predictions in the 4 hours between now and 6 o'clock. We've got Mike Detillier coming up 2:15. We'll also talk with Josh from College Football Nerds. He is a highly requested guest on our show. We'll do that all starting on The Game in a couple of minutes. I appreciate Matt and Lars for allowing me to set in here on Big Noon Sports. The Game continues in 2 minutes. T-Town Tide 100.9, the home of Alabama Crimson Tide Sports.